Welcome to this episode of Insights with Ovationz. I am your host, Aaron Ellis. Today, I am joined by Lyndsay Dowd. Now, Lyndsay is a Chief Heartbeat Officer. I love that. We're going to dive into that one. She's a speaker, a podcast host, an author, a storyteller, and an award-winning top 10 business coach recognized by Apple News and Google News. With a remarkable 25-year career in sales and leadership, Lyndsay works with executives to rewire their leadership approach to fortify their culture and drive results. We're coming back to that statement because I want to really branch out of that. Now, on top of that, she also has the gift of hospitality and loves to entertain. She's a dog lover, especially wiener dogs, and a mother of twins. Lyndsay, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, I love bridging the personal and the professional. So when I find stuff like that, I'm like, perfect, because it's not, there's no separation. Well, let's start there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Like I work with companies to help them understand that. What's your thoughts and things you've encountered on bridging that personal and professional in the business world?
Well, we're 360-degree humans. And I think that really kind of unearthed itself after the pandemic or during the pandemic. You had everybody working out of their homes. And so people were being introduced to people's homes for the first time. And I know I was one of those lurkers like, oh, what's going on back there? What are they? Oh, interesting choice. So you started seeing more of people. But I teach a LinkedIn course and I teach people when they're building their profiles to put in some of those personal moments that gives people an opportunity to connect. And I can't tell you the amount of people that comment on, I'm a twin, or I have twins too, or my sister is a twin, or whatever. It gives people an opportunity to just relate to you. And so whenever you can do that, you're giving them a little gift and you're giving them an opportunity to just vibe and talk. And I think it's so important because we're so much more than our job.
I completely agree. I want to dive in and ask you a couple questions on things I want to get a little definition to, because they gave me pause and I always wonder what people mean. What do you mean by fortify their culture?
Yeah. So I think when you look at the history of business really came about out of a manufacturing time. It was very automated. It was very male. It was very punch card and process and transactional. And business has changed and people sell differently. They want to relate to their clients. They want to connect with their clients. And we use stories to do that now. And so there's kind of been this evolution of, I don't want to say softness, but more human, more humanity, more willingness to meet people where they are. And so with all of the technology change and with all of, the whole world has changed around us. Everything is much faster than it was when things started. And there's a lot more women in business now. Thank goodness. It's still not where it should be, but it's definitely changed. And when you think about leadership, if I were to ask a room full of people, have you ever had a bad leader? 100% will raise their hand. Mm-hmm. If you say, have you ever had a great leader? You might get 50%. And that means that other 50% has never had a great leader. And where does culture come from? Leadership. And so I wrote my book. It's called Top Down Culture. And the reason that I chose that title was because culture starts at the top. So if you are a raving leader who runs around with their hair on fire and you're belittling people and embarrassing people, that is exactly what you are projecting that it is okay to do for the rest of your company. So that's the culture you are setting up. Yeah. If you come at it from a place of, I've got your back and I want to see you win, and how can I help you? And what obstacles can I remove? And how can I be the best leader for you? You're bringing out an entirely different vibe. And so that is where the good culture comes from. So what I teach is, how do we get leaders to think differently about the way that they're motivating their people? There's a massive difference between manipulation and inspiration. And we want to lean heavy on inspiration.
I love that. I wrote down, model the behavior you want to see. And you basically were just talking about that as far as leadership. Now, let me ask you this from this perspective. One of the things I always tell companies when I'm working with them is you have to work with your people and within your people. Mm-hmm. What prompted that thought when I was reading your stuff is your ability to identify superpowers in people.
Yes.
And basically draw them out and amplify the team's success. So can you talk about that and how you do that with companies?
I love to. So if you're talking to me, and you already know this, Aaron, we don't call them soft skills around here. We call them power skills.
Yeah.
And the reason is because soft skills diminishes how important they are. And soft skills or power skills are things like empathy, vulnerability, delegation, that is a power skill, leveraging recognition. And you use all of these things, and there's many more. You use all of these things to get the best out of people. Can I share a story?
Please.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I had when I was a client exec at IBM at one point. I spent 23 years there, and this is a very high job within the company, and I had a lot of responsibility. I had a $150 million quota, and I had a team of about 55 people. And these people did not report to me. I was the quarterback, but they didn't report to me. And I was giving my presentation of how I wanted to approach this client to my new boss. And I said to her, you know, I'm thinking of this and I want to try this. And she said, girl, I've got your back. Now fly. And those words gave me goosebumps then. They give me goosebumps now. But what that did was it made me take a breath and go, oh my gosh, if I fail, if I fall down, she's got me. Wow. So now I can do some really cool stuff. So I turned around to my team and was like, guys, what haven't we done? We've got a leader who has our back. So let's think differently. Let's think outside the box. Who haven't we talked to? What haven't we tried? And we got very, very creative, and we really extended our reach. Well, we ultimately closed the largest deal any of us had ever seen. It was over $23 million. This relationship with this client was very complicated because we were each other's clients, we were each other's partners, and we were each other's competitors. So there were strings attached everywhere. And so we had to do everything very thoughtfully, but we entirely changed the relationship, all from that one moment of her saying, I've got your back, now fly. So giving someone support and showing that you're there for them, regardless of what happens, that is a massive, massive thing. But the other thing that you have to do as a leader is you have to say, how can I be the best leader for you? And when you do that, everybody's going to have a different answer. And that's based on age. It's based on tenure. It's based on goals. It's based on, a whole bunch of stuff. And when I asked that question of my team, I got really fun answers. One was like, stay the hell out of my way. You're an escalation point. I got one that said, I need some role playing. Can we do some coaching and some role playing? Because I want to make sure I'm presenting this right. I had one woman who was like, I don't understand my job. I came over here from marketing. I don't even know what I'm doing here. And when you can understand the help that they need, you can serve them. And leaders are in service to their teams. This is not you got a title and now you get respect. You got to earn that. Finding people's superpowers comes from meeting them where they are. And whenever you give them the space to tell you what they need, you are on your way to finding their superpowers.
So let me ask you a question here and track this here, because I like looking for through lines. Finding people's superpowers. How'd you say that? Finding people's superpowers is what?
Finding their superpowers is the path to success. It's the path to magic. I mean, you are basically going to be able to say, okay, so Aaron, what are you really good at? And what do you want to get better at? Oh, Lindsay, I'm really good.
I think you were talking about, like, how did you figure out what their superpowers are? Like, you phrased it. I'm going to paraphrase it because I was looking for the exact words, but you're like, finding people's superpowers is basically, you're about understanding who they are. It's kind of the way I took it. Which, if we step back to the modeling the behavior you want to see, you need to understand who you are.
That's right.
There needs to be a constant, introspection, right? Self-reflection. And the other thing I wrote down, and I want you to add to this, is how vulnerability and authenticity wins.
So vulnerability and authenticity these are kind of like the hot words right now that are in the LinkedIn world and the vernacular of what people are craving. But imagine if you are kind of an old school leader. I've been doing it this way for 20 years. Those words are scary. Authenticity, you probably got okay, but the vulnerability piece doesn't feel good because they immediately think, you want me to tell someone like I'm bad at something? No, they have to know I'm good at something. Well, here's the reality. Nobody knows everything. No leader ever does. I don't care how qualified you are. And if you know everything, you're overqualified and you shouldn't be doing that job.
Mhm.
When you come in from a place of humility and you come in from a place of, I'm not the smartest one in the room. Y'all have been doing this longer than I have. Tell me what I don't know. Tell me the things that I need to fix. Tell me the things that I can do better. First of all, they're excited to be listened to.
Yeah.
And you are building trust. Trust is your currency. So you have to have trust in order to get greatness from people. There's no question that is so, so important. And so when you can sit there and say, hey, can I share? I was not very good at this. And it took a leader to do X, Y, Z to pull this out from me. And now I can do that for you. That shows growth. That doesn't show you're a hack. That's not saying you're bad at something. That's saying you grew. And I teach people how to tell stories about themselves, how to talk
Mhm.
about themselves and curate their story. So I always go to, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you in your career or personally? And what did you do from that point forward? What's the growth? Tell me that, because that's the sweet spot. That's the
Yeah.
interesting piece. That's the piece that's so memorable. And when you're one of many, as many sellers are, you've got to set yourself apart. You've got to be able to tell that 2-minute soundbite that's going to make your client go, I want more of this. I want to hear more. I want to listen. I want to engage. And I remember that person.
Love it.
So yeah, when you're vulnerable, all kinds of trust occurs. And that's when people will start to take risks. That's when people will be like, oh, I love that. She was bad at that, but now look at her. She's crushing it. I trust her. And that's really how you think about it.
Yeah. So are you open to a scenario or two or three?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm curious. I'm thinking about, the Epic series that we're curating right now at Ovationz, and this is some of my experience too, and just things that I've encountered over the years that you always encounter. Some of these things you're always going to encounter. Some of these have been really relevant in the last year and stuff, and are really talked about. So maybe, and if you've dealt with this, with a client with this, great. If you haven't, that's great too. But I'm curious on how you would approach this with everything we just talked about. So when we talk about downsizing, we talk about layoffs.
Oh,
how can a leader do those downsizing, do the layoff, and be vulnerable and authentic, still continue to amplify the success of their team members, even if they're laying them off? Also bring in the psychological safety, which we haven't talked on yet, and use, as you would put it, real candor and not brutal honesty.
Yeah. So first, let me just say, I had to lay people off, and I swore I never wanted to get good at it, and I never did. I thought laying someone off was probably one of the worst things that I would ever have to do as a leader. You're affecting someone's life in a terribly negative way, and it's usually not of your choosing. You're being told you have to do this. But the most important thing you can do as a leader, and we already talked about how important trust is, when you are consistent with the way you communicate, the way you lift others up, how you leverage recognition, if you're creating a positive environment, those messages and those hard decisions that you have to weather come easier. And I will tell you that when I had to lay people off, it was funny. One of my bosses, I had to be a witness for one of her layoffs because it was a wild one. And we had to sit with each other while we were doing this. And we hated it. We were so stressed. And so we sat there and she would listen to mine as I was delivering it, but everyone knew, they give you a script and they say, don't deviate from the script. And I'm like, well, this doesn't sound anything like me. And anyone that knows I didn't say this. This is just, so I would say, just so you know, I'm reading from a script, and I would say, this is what I've been asked to say. Now, 5 out of 6 times, those people were like, Lynn, I'm so sorry you have to do this. I'm like, what are you apologizing to me for? This is terrible. And I'm sorry for this whole situation. And you really weren't even allowed to say you were sorry, but they knew that I was. Do you know I still maintain those relationships today? And it's because of the consistency and the heart on the front end.
Yeah.
They know I wasn't out to get them. They know it was financial reasons or downsizing or whatever the reason was that day. And most of them saw it coming. But they knew my heart and they knew the style of leader that I was. And one of the things when you mentioned psychological safety, that was a hugely important thing for me to build with my teams. And I was interviewed once and someone said, I heard psychological safety. I hate that term because it makes me think everybody can just mail it in. And I went, oh, no. Psychological safety is giving people the space and the freedom to take risks and do things they've never done before. This is the opposite of breeding a culture of mediocrity. This is giving people space to shine. And so when you can create that trust and that safe space for people to fly, they will. And that's where the magic happens. I always called my teams mavericks and hustlers, and they wore that proudly. We were weird. We thought of things differently. We did things differently. We built new best practices, but that was because they felt safe enough to do it. And from the outside looking in, people are like, I don't know what they're doing over there. They keep crushing their numbers, but their stuff's weird. Like they're hosting webinars. We don't do that. They're doing experts. We don't do that. My team loved that. They were proud of it. It was fun. And anybody that said, hey, I think I want to go look at another role or another job, I always supported them because I wanted only people that wanted to be there. It was very important to me. And everybody knew that. They'd be like, you're letting her go? She's only been on the team for 6 months. Yeah, but she wants to try something. So I'm going to support her in that. And if she doesn't want to be here, I've got to let her go. We're creating space for the people that should be here. And that takes a secure leader to do that.
Yeah. Wow. And you hit on every single thing. So what you really, I want to really kind of recap this because I think there's a through line. There's a structural integrity to what you said, and that's important to me and what I bring to people. So I'm going to bring some of the things we talked about off camera too. I'm a startup junkie. I love to talk about culture and change management and stuff from the gate before they even have any.
So important.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And if you can build that culture of empowering people, as you put it, to fly, empowering your team to fly, which might mean they're going to fly the coop one day. They're going to fly out of the nest, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the culture you create. Then when you do have those hard question or hard conversations, there's this trust and rapport already there. They know you have their best interests at heart. You're not trying to down them. And yes, you can, and they know you're being authentic and sensitive to what they're really going through. It's so important. And that's why, so I talk about, like, I love in my roadmap with Ovationz is to teach companies to be proactive about this. Like I can look at a company and know you're going to come across this, guys, especially if you don't want to, let's address it now. Let's make you, embrace it. So I love that you said that, man. And that goes back to me saying working with and within people. Yeah. Now I want to ask you this question in another way, because this is another thing that we've addressed. And I'm going to put these two together just for time's sake, but it's kind of the same scenario. And I'm curious on if you've encountered this, and it's similar, but it's different. Take a company that is either, let's say they're doing a merger and acquisition. They're bringing in two complete seats. How do you choose who stays and who goes? What have you done there? And also the same scenario could be for a company that's getting ready to pivot and scale. Yeah. And they've come to me and said, Aaron, we need to know who's going to be able to endure the storm. Who is going to have the drive and the ability to handle the stress that they're going to be under. So I've been asked to come in and assess companies on that, or with change management. So I'll pass that to you for some insights.
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to do, whether you are assessing existing talent or new talent, and especially for managers that are taking on new teams. I was the lucky leader of the Island of Misfit Toys many times, where a bunch of acquisitions were brought under me, and I had to create this synergy and this moment of people connecting, which they were not super interested in doing. But the first thing you have to do is go on a listening tour. And the listening tour is going to serve you very well. And by that, I mean, sit down with your people and ask some questions. What's working? What's not working? What do you love? What would you like to change? And is there anything I could do as a leader to help you? So when you start asking the same questions to all of the people, top performers and even the lesser ones, you're going to start to notice some themes. You're going to start to really see the politics for what it is, but you're also going to see who's really committed to the business. Yeah. And that's going to help you make some decisions that are hard. You're going to see where there's a lack of interest. You're going to see where people feel out of their depth, and that helps you make those decisions too. But when you take that time to understand the landscape, you're going to be a better leader for sure. But you are building trust with every conversation because you are listening. Yeah. And most people, but people don't quit companies, they quit leaders. And most people don't feel heard. They don't feel that their leader has taken the time to get to know them. And whenever I had one boss who I adored, and when she promoted me twice, and she said, so Lynn, how do you want to run your business? And I was like, you want to know? Like, really? You want to? Oh my God, this is so exciting. And I'm like, give me 2 days and I'm going to come back and I'm going to tell you. And I turned to my team and I said, all right, we have an opportunity to do things differently. We've got a boss who supports us. What do you want to do? And, all of my leaders would raise their hands. We have to do this. We have to do this. And I got to be fairly choosy with the things that I wanted to focus on, knowing what was going to benefit us the most. But I was able to come back and say, this is the direction I want to take it. And I contributed to more than 50% of her revenue for that role. So it was a really powerful question she asked. And I think when you can ascertain who has the drive and the initiative to run their business, then you're going to be in a good spot to know who you need to keep and who you need to move into other roles or exit the company.
Man, I love this. Like we're at 21 minutes, but I'm going to ask you one more question anyway. More questions, actually. Yeah. We talked about this in the beginning, the personal and professional, like they're one and the same. Mm-hmm. Tell us about the twins, the wiener dogs, the dachshunds. Tell us about you.
One wiener dog is right there. I don't know if you can see her. She's tiny. She's 7.5 pounds. It's Poppy Long Sausage.
Poppy Long Sausage.
She's big on Instagram. And my twins are teenagers. They're turning 16. So I have boy-girl twins. I think, any working parent will tell you that their kids are hugely important to you hope they're going to tell you that their kids are hugely important to your life. I know you feel that way. Mm-hmm. And, I had a pretty unique transition. Maybe it wasn't so unique, but after being in a company for 23 years, I went to another company and then was fired. So my kids had to watch the turmoil of that. And then they watched me build my business. And that is it's a humbling thing as a parent to be scared on your own and to not look like you're scared and to say, we're going to be okay. But it's something they're really proud of. And, now when I tell them, oh, I've had such and such Olympian on my show, like my son is a high jumper at track and I have an Olympic high jumper coming on, next week. And I said, you got to send me film so she can critique it and she'll tell you what to do. And he's like, oh my God, no, I'm nervous. And then I told them that I got asked to speak at Harvard and they're like, Mom, that's the coolest thing you've done yet. And I'm like, I wrote a book. I have like 95 episodes of a podcast. That's the coolest thing. I'll take it. That's great. Okay.
That's funny.
They are very much a part of all of this. And I have a lot of their friends who follow me on my socials and they're like, I want to work for you, which I think is really a testament to the kind of leadership they crave. And I think being seen and being heard is what everybody wants. So it's nice when you see that kind of resonance with a younger mind. So.
Uh-oh.
Am I still here?
We froze up there for a second, but we're back, thankfully. So
okay.
Well, wonderful. I know we're at 23 minutes, but I do want to let you give any final thoughts or anything you really wanted to share today, if there is anything, before we close out.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you said, I'm a number of things. I'm a speaker, I'm a coach, I work with C-suites, and I do long-term coaching engagements with them to really help rewire their leadership and fortify their culture. That is my sweet spot. But speaking to companies on this, it is such an important topic. And Aaron, this is not a nice to have. This. This is a fundamental to good business. And people The Great Resignation showed us people don't want that old style of leadership that is domineering and, controlling. They want to be inspired. They want to feel seen. They want to have a chance to shine. And we need more of that. And we need more people to raise their hand and say, yeah, I've had a great leader, because there's not enough time for any of us. And you've got to make that impact. You don't want to be the star of somebody's bad memory. You want to be the reason that they're shining today.
And we need those leaders to learn some new power skills.
Amen.
You got it. Lyndsay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on and sharing your insights and stuff with us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody. It's been another episode of Insights with Ovationz. You can find Lyndsay over at ovationz.com, as well as when we do have her episode up, we'll have all other ways that you can reach her. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.